Hello, friends. It's Pastor Jay here to start us out on another journey, another study together. Thank you for taking the time to be here, to learn, to continue to grow. Hopefully, this will be a good study for you and give us some practical tips on how to share our faith. But most importantly, what I think this book is going to do is going to change our minds on how we've done evangelism in the past, and sitting here and thinking, well, that's how we've always done it, or that's how it's worked in the past, and shifting to a new way of looking at the world around us, looking at the people around us, and hopefully giving us some good insight into what we can do to share our faith with this generation. So I hope you're excited for this, as I am, because this is a wonderful book, a great way to look at things, and a good study for all of us to be reminded that we need to share our faith. So if nothing else, for the next 8 weeks, 7 more weeks after today, this will be a good reminder that we need to be sharing our faith with those around us, and this book can help us to know how to do that. Just some ground rules. You probably all know this already, but this is week 1 of 8. This study will run for 8 weeks, and it will cover the introduction this week, and then 7 more weeks, 7 more chapters, talking about the different shifts that we need to do in our evangelism strategies. So that's great. A couple of quick notes for everybody as we get going in this. I want us to really focus this study in locally and on ourselves. What I mean by that is I don't want us to sit here and think, okay, how can this book fix my husband or my wife? How can this book fix my kids? How can this book, change my family around? That's not the concept of this book. That's not what we're doing with this study. What it means is I want us to, when we're reading through this book, when we're asking questions, when we're brainstorming together, I want us to think about how this can change us. How can this change me specifically when I'm reading this book, and what can I do differently in my life, as opposed to be, in your small groups and you're thinking, oh, I bet so-and-so could really do well in this study. So that's one mindset that we need to change. Number 2 is, as much as we all would love to see the world back to the way it used to be, or how as much as we want to change the world, that's not what this study is. This study is to focus, again, changing us, and I want this study to really have an impact on BRC, not necessarily the worldwide church at large. So I want us to think locally when we read this book, when we brainstorm together ideas, when we practice, when we do things with evangelism. I want us to think locally and not think globally when it comes to this book. So there's just a couple of things that I want us to be thinking about and to focus on during this study. So let's get into the introductory chapter. I thought it was very good. It sets forth the problem, if you will. Starts right out on page 2 with a quote that's there. 47% of millennial Christians believe that sharing their faith with others is wrong. Very quick way to get to the point in the introductory chapter to say that, and that's part of that is a problem. And again, the rest of the book will explain that sentence, so don't necessarily jump down the author's throat just yet. But that's a statistic. That was from a survey. That's one of the reasons I picked this book, is that the premises behind the book are not just based on what the author thinks. The reasons behind the book are based on a study of non-Christian people, of what he calls later on in this chapter the post-everything world. So these are the next generations of non-Christians. What do they think? How can we tailor our evangelism to them? And we need to change the way we think, because then we can interact with people in the way that they think. So yeah, that was a strong indictment that the younger generations of this time are not sharing their faith because they think it's wrong. We can get into, there's probably many reasons behind that. He didn't get too much into it in the book, but that's the problem. But that wasn't the only problem. So if you're sitting there saying, oh, good, this guy's going to just rail on millennials the whole book, that is not correct. If you're a millennial, you should think, yay, hopefully you kept reading and didn't stop at that point, because actually he says that the solution to the problem also comes from your generation, not just the older generations, because He mentions a little bit later on, he says, when we look at the older generations, the data shows that the lack of interaction with the broader culture poses its own set of problems. I think that's a direct quote from the book. So there's more statistics. Half of the Christians in the United States have just 2 spiritual conversations per year or fewer. That's the high-end number, is 2 spiritual conversations a year. 38% of adult Christians in the U.S. don't even have a single non-Christian friend or family member. What's that saying is we have our little bubble of Christians that we like to stay in. And there's reasons for that as well, right? We get encouraged, we're family with one another, but how can we share our faith with someone if we don't spend time with someone that's a non-Christian outside of the faith? Here's the next big point that he made in this introductory chapter, is that our culture has shifted. We being America in 2021, are entering into a new epoch, which was a great word. If you don't know what that word means, look it up. It's great. It is possible that this is the first time in the history of the church where we've needed to learn how to navigate in a post-Christian culture. Shifts are occurring all over the world, which press us towards a post-everything era. And he goes in to describe that, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I really want us to stop and think about that, especially those of us in the older generations. I'm going to lump myself in there. Gen X is really the middle one, but the boomer generation for sure spend a lot of time talking about and thinking about and hoping for the 1950s to come back. The Beaver Cleaver era of this country, where it was not only socially acceptable to be a Christian, but it was the norm. You knew a lot of people that went to church back in the day. That was how it was. That's just what you do. It was part of our culture. The Christian values that this country was founded on came back after some great awakening things and after World War II with a vengeance, and some great things truly happened in this culture. It's been a few years since that's happened, and there's been some shifts in our culture that have moved away from that Christian era of our history. We need to understand that. We can take time to grieve that loss if you would like, please do, but we need to move on from that. We need to know that that's not coming back. Mayberry, is not coming back to the United States anytime soon. And that's the shift that we're talking about. So, since there's been a shift in our culture, there needs to be a shift in our evangelism strategy. So in our culture, it's post-Christian. We've talked about that. Post-family, that's a sad one as well. But again, the family is not always the nucleus of our society, at least not in the way that it was known before. It's post-technology, which a lot of you may, I took a double take on that. I didn't understand what they were trying to say. But what he meant by that, by post-technology, is that it's not so much that we are dying for the newest technology anymore. It's that we're kind of done with that, especially after 2020. We're not ecstatic about Zoom meetings anymore, online meetings. They were great and they filled their purpose, and I don't believe they're going anywhere, just in my opinion. But nobody's dying for that next thing now. We all know how to do it. It's there if we need it, but it's not necessarily the wave of the future. It was what was necessary in 2020. That's what he meant by post-technology, is that we're not just dying for new things to be coming out anymore. And also a post-supersize world. I'm a supersized individual, so I understand what he's talking about with that as well. I remember growing up and having that, I can get this gigantic thing of French fries and 60-ounce Coke to go with my hamburger at McDonald's. And so the new trend is not bigger, better, stronger, faster, everything that they're saying that it was back in maybe the 90s when I was growing up. This world today is the tiny house world, right? There is decluttering. People don't want stuff, they want experiences. And so they're also understanding the concept of being small and understanding small, and leaving a small carbon footprint is also a big deal in this culture. So this is what's going on around us. But I don't think that we need to lose hope. He says this too. I'm going to quote him on this. We don't need to lose hope. We don't need to ignore the problem or give up, because the church is uniquely positioned to fill all of these unmet needs in our post-everything era. What he says is that post-Christian culture is yearning for deep, meaningful dialogue about spiritual things. Since not everybody goes to church, where is someone going to go to ask a question about God? Where is someone going to go to talk about their doubts about spirituality or about the world? Or what does the Bible say? We are uniquely positioned to be there to answer questions that people have. Our post-family culture is looking for a place where they can belong. People are looking for belonging. They want to be a part of something. Our post-technology culture is seeking out genuine interactions. I know we've said many times, oh, it's not the same, but there's a generation of young people who are now high school, college age, who their interactions were online for a long time, and they did that, and that was fun, and that's the way the world is, but they're looking for a sense of belonging that's beyond an online culture. There are some that aren't, it's very true, but a good group are looking to be involved and to belong somewhere. And the church is a great place to do that. We provide belonging to brothers and sisters in Christ all the time. And then our post-supersized culture desires intimate communities. They're not necessarily looking for the huge mega churches anymore. We're now looking for a place where we can get involved, but we can be seen and people can be heard. And they want to be, it doesn't have to be a huge culture. It can be a smaller, intimate community. And again, that's something that the church provides, not only in Sunday morning worship, but in the same group setting that you're at right now. A small group, a life group, a place to do life together, to grow in our spirituality and our faith together with people who might have some questions. And that's really setting the table for what this book is going to be teaching us all. The next 7 chapters of the book after this introduction are timely adjustments that we need to make in our evangelism strategy. And I love the fact that he really focuses on the root, or all of these shifts are rooted in the timeless approach of Jesus. Most often, each chapter will have at least one, if not 2 stories of how Jesus interacted with the culture that he was in, and that so the idea is still there. The method is still there, the way that Jesus did it. Now, what we're doing is we're changing it for our culture, but still keeping the idea behind what Jesus did. Possibly some of the methods may change, but we're still following what Jesus did way back 2,000 years ago. I love the last point that he makes, I think, in this chapter, in this introduction, that really stuck out to me, is that evangelism is not just something for pastors to do. You can do it too. You can change the way that you approach evangelism. You don't have to dismantle everything that you're currently doing at your church, at our church, or in your life. But by rethinking some of our strategies, we can see a renewal of people outside of the church coming to new life through Jesus Christ. And I have to believe that's our goal for this. That's why we're reading this book. That's why we're studying this, because we know what Jesus has done for us. The new life God has provided for us in Christ when he turned our heart of stone into a heart of flesh and opened up a world of faith to us through what Jesus did in his life, death, and resurrection and ascension. We want that for other people. We want that for our loved ones. We want that for our family, our friends, for people that we've known for years, we've been praying for years. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you have a name or 2 of people that you are specifically reading this book or taking this class or joining this study for. And that's okay. Again, I want us to think small and think locally. So, in fact, there's a place next week to write down some names of who you're doing this for and who you can intentionally create, or maybe it's 2 weeks, I'm sorry. They all kind of run together when you create when you're putting the study together. But really, there is a place for that in here. So for the rest of this week, I want you to take some time reading through and doing the discussion questions. A lot of them are going to ask about your past experience in evangelism. What have you done in the past? What are you doing currently? And I want us to think about BRC as well. What is BRC's past experience in evangelism? What is BRC currently doing now? And if you don't know the answers to those questions, that means there's a problem in communication between the leadership of the church and everybody that's in these studies. And that's okay. We'll work on that. That doesn't mean we have to, we're terrible or throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we'll get there. But it's going to ask you some really difficult, challenging questions. Are we willing to change the way that we do evangelism and try something new? Is there stuff that we've tried in the past that hasn't worked, but we're still kind of stuck in those? Are there methods that God wants you to try, but you've maybe not tried them because you don't have the courage or you are scared of what might come from them? Those are all things that, again, that doesn't make you a terrible person. That doesn't mean you have to get overly dramatic and be all freaking out around anything, but we need to be honest with each other. We need to be open, at least with ourselves, to say, okay, maybe this is what's been going on, or maybe I am just too scared to talk to anybody about my faith, and that's okay at the moment. We can't stay there. Come as you are, but don't stay as you are in this study. So we're going to end this session in some prayer, asking God for wisdom when it comes to evangelism. What am I doing that's not great, or what am I not doing at all? We're also going to ask for a willingness to try things the way that Jesus did. It's a good idea, and to have an open mind and a heart as we read through this study together. If you're going to argue with every point that the author makes, maybe this isn't the study for you. Or maybe we need to just pray for God to change us on the inside, to say, okay, maybe there's some raw emotion in that, but I need to be more open-minded. Why am I so stuck on the old ways of doing things? Or why am I stuck on how I see the world and the culture around us today? Because unfortunately, the only constant thing in our world is change. Everything changes, and it's changed very quickly for us over the last few years. A lot of things have changed, and a lot of things continue to change. And we've needed to deal with that. Now we need to deal with that on the topic of evangelism here at BRC. So that's what I'm asking for us. That's what I'm praying for each one of us, is that we will be open-minded to this study and learn and think about how Jesus would do evangelism and how we can change. We can be transformed in the way that we look at evangelism, so that more people can come to know and have that life-changing renewal in Jesus Christ. As always, and I've said this in all of my other studies and videos, if you have any questions, if you have any concerns or any comments that you want to talk to me about, please shoot me an email, shoot me a text, give me a call, come see me in the office while I'm here. I would love to talk to you about any of these things. But I hope that you can spend some time today dealing with some of the changes that have happened in our culture, and then making that jump to say, okay, we need to do some changes in our strategies and how we evangelize going forward. So continue to think, continue to pray, and continue to grow. That's all we ask for. Thank you all very much. I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.